Hey everybody, Martha here, your favorite English teacher, hopefully. And today I wanted to do a January wrap-up, even though I've already done a February wrap-up. I realized I hadn't let you know what books I read in January, so we're going to hop right into that. Also, this is the first time that I'm filming with my kids actually awake. Let's see how that goes. I'm not hopeful for that, 5 kids and all that fun stuff. All right, so the very first 2 books I read of this year didn't start me out too strong. But here's the thing. We were going to Disney, and I have to drive because I get car sick. I even make myself car sick sometimes when I'm driving. So I definitely had to drive that long drive of about 10 hours. So I needed something to listen to that wouldn't require a crazy ton amount of focus, where, if I needed to switch lanes or a semi-truck was about to run us over, I could still be in control of the car, but know what was happening in the story. So I got 2 books from the same author, and it's A.R. Torre, not sure how you say that person's name, not sure if it's a woman or man, sorry about that. And they're thrillers, and I have read this author before and just knew that it was good bubblegum for the mind, very good plot twists. I hate to say very good plot twists because it wasn't very good. Decent plot twist, easy to follow, writing decent, just, it was okay. It was good. It was decent. I guess that's the word that I keep using, decent. And I was going to tell you a little synopsis about both of these books, but then I realized one of them I literally don't have any idea what happened. I just read it 2 months ago. I don't know what happened. I don't remember a thing about this book. One of them I do remember is about a woman who writes obituaries for a newspaper, which I think that's pretty cool. Little trope there going on. A writer. We see a lot of authors writing about other authors. I think that's because that's what they know. So you know that whole thing about you write what you know. But regardless, she's an obituary writer, and then she gets tangled up in an affair. I didn't even tell you what the name of this book is. It's called A Familiar Stranger. I think that's the one. A Familiar Stranger. So she gets wrapped up in an affair, and her whole life starts to unravel. She finds out that everybody around her has been lying. Her husband has been deceiving her, and it was not believable, which I know a lot of thrillers are not, but once the thread started to unravel, and the twist started to come, it was just one after the other, that just really didn't make much sense. Were not believable. I gave that one a 3, and then the next one by the same author, I gave a 4-star. But now that I'm thinking about it and I don't remember a thing about it, maybe I shouldn't have given it a 4-star. But I did. Okay, so those were just good, decent thrillers. The next book that I read was The Housemaid by Freida McFadden, and I gave this a 2-star, 2 out of 5. I probably should have given it a 1. Maybe that's being a little too harsh. Okay, it's a thriller, and it's about a woman who finds herself unemployed and homeless. And her last resort, apparently she's been in prison. We find that out at the very beginning of the book. And we don't know what for, though. But her last resort is getting this job as a housekeeper, nanny. She's not really a nanny, so I guess just a housekeeper for this extremely wealthy couple. So she gets the job, surprisingly, because she didn't think she would get the job because of her background. But she gets the job, and then all of this weird stuff starts to happen, with her boss, the woman of the house, is very condescending. She's very rude. She claims that she's told the girl stuff that she hasn't told her, and vice versa. And so we just follow along this trip, and to me, it was very apparent where it was going. I was able to see what was happening way before it happened, which ruined some of it for me. But then when the actual reveals started to happen, I hated how gruesome they were. It was they were just there for the shock factor, and I get it. I just didn't like it. Okay, it was fine, whatever. There's more in the series. Apparently it's really popular. People love it. I didn't, especially like I said, when it got to the reveals and it started talking about particular abuse that was happening. I just can't stomach it in detail. I don't want to hear when it's so almost realistic, where you think, okay, this could actually happen, and then you start hearing all these horrors. I can't take it. And just add to that, the writing style was not super elegant. It was decent. Okay, let's let's move on past that. Okay, so the next one, we're getting like closer to one of my new favorites ever. Not there yet, but the next one I read was definitely a hit. And somehow I had been sleeping on reading this book, even though I think everyone and their brother has already read it, except for me. Okay. It's the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, Grady Hendrix. And this was so much fun. I listened to it on audiobook, and I have to admit, sometimes I did get a little confused by the characters, because it's, when I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm usually like washing the dishes or driving or even grading homework. And sometimes I'm not fully paying enough attention to catch character changes or little nuances about characters. So that was probably the biggest reason that it didn't get a 5. Well, that and some of the graphic nature, which I'll go into in a second. But it was so much fun. Like, I've seen criticism on Goodreads about this book, about how it is like putting women back 100 years because of the way that the writer portrays women, and criticism that the writer's a man, so how dare he portray women like this. But guys, this was set in the 90s in the South. And as someone who's from the South, obviously you can tell by my accent, that's how women were and still are treated. These women, to give you a synopsis, have this book club, obviously, hence the title, and then they start feeling in their gut that this new person in their neighborhood, this new man, might be up to no good, and one even starts to believe that he's a vampire. But because all the men in their lives are telling them to ignore their intuition, and they're just being frivolous and yada yada yada, you know, like the typical thing that happens still to a lot of women, they decide not to go after it until years and years and years have passed, and we see how that plays out. Now, there are a few graphic scenes in this novel, both sexually and gory. It's not violence necessary, but like bugs and animals and stuff. So like, oh, the ick factor, it was there. It was there. Okay. No, it was there. But I did give it a 4 out of 5. It was a good read. It had, it went beyond just horror. It actually made me think about a few things, about how, I hate to say that it was a feminist book, because I don't know if it was actually meant to be perceived like that. But it definitely did, in my mind, especially coming from the Southern woman point of view, cement in my mind about how all of these men just sat around while their wives were trying to save the world. And not only were they trying to save the world, they were being discounted while they did that. So there's, you know, some deep thought that went into that. Okay, next book that I read. It's a new favorite of all time. I can't wait to read it again. Literally just read it 2 months ago, and I want to read it again. Maybe this time I'll do the audiobook, because the first time around I just did the digital copy. Also, side note, as you'll notice, I don't think you've ever seen me hold a physical book on this channel, and you're probably never going to do it. For some reason, I just don't read as much if I have a physical book. So I use my app, Libby app, I use Kindle, I use Amazon Unlimited, I use Audible, and all that sorts of fun stuff. Okay, back to my favorite. The Cherry Robbers. Oh, okay, so this one is in the horror genre, but it's a gothic novel. That's absolutely what I would categorize it as. So if you like, I was going to say Jane Eyre, but no. Let's say if you like Rebecca du Maurier, or Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, something like that, I think you would like The Cherry Robbers. It follows this family, again, females. It's a group of sisters who their mother is trying to warn them and their entire family that when these sisters get married, they will die. No one believes the mother. Everyone discounts the mother. Again, like we went back to in that previous theme. And we start to see what she is predicting, or what she is warning. We start to see those things come true. And we're following one of the sisters, the youngest sister, as the protagonist, trying to stop this fate from happening to her older sisters, but also trying to understand how it will affect herself. So we do have a little bit of dual timelines going on here, which I always appreciate in a novel. And so we have flashbacks, and then we see how it has played out in her modern day life. And it is beautiful how it plays out. It does have an LGBT storyline in it, but, and I say that because as someone who teaches in a Christian school and holds certain Christian beliefs, I always want to make sure that you know what you're getting into reading. But I feel like that wasn't the focus, if that makes sense. Like, the focus was not on any sort of sexuality or anything like that of the book. The focus is so much bigger and greater than that. The focus is on women's destinies and power and position in society, and how that has changed throughout the years, yet how it has ultimately stayed the same. And the ending of this book is beautiful. The writing in this book is beautiful. I highlighted so much, not physically highlighted because I don't have a physical copy, but guess what? I just told you how you're never going to see me hold up a physical copy, but this is the one book I've ordered, like in a real book format. Like, I'm really excited to get that and to actually annotate, because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So 5 stars all the way. Okay. That being said, I didn't tell you who that was by. That's Sarah Walker. I thought, well, okay, this book knocked it out of the park. I want to read something else by Sarah Walker. So I picked up Dietland. And the basic premise of it is that we're following a character named Plum, who is obese. And she has been that way her whole life, but she has tried many different diet programs to get thinner. And those have all failed. And while they have failed, she has endured insults, injuries. She has endured a lot of just horrible things from peers, but also from strangers because of her weight. And let me pause right there. That was the one bit of the writing that I wasn't too sure about, because when her weight is revealed, it's a weight that I actually was very close to weighing before I lost weight recently. And I never received the mean comments in public like she did. I never received the pranks like she did. So I was a little like, this isn't very realistic, but I put that aside. And this is really wild how this happens. She follows this one diet plan that she loves, but then it goes out of business. And then we fast forward in her life later on, another dual timeline perspective, which I love. And we see that she meets the daughter of the woman who created that diet program that she loved. And that woman is trying to rectify all the wrongs that her mother did. It's such a beautiful story, powerful, I think. However, where I feel like Sarah Walker missed the mark a little bit is that she added in this secondary storyline of feminist vigilante group that is terrorizing not just the United States, but the entire world. And they are doing horrible things, horrible acts of violence to men who have treated women horribly. And that storyline in itself was pretty rough to read because of the language, because of the scenes, because of the graphic descriptions that were on paper. It was pretty rough. And I think that if we had split these into 2 different novels, then maybe both of them could have hit them out of the park. As is, just together, it muddled down Plum's story and made it seem not as important, when I think Plum's story could have stood all on its own without this extra stuff trying to make it more exciting. That's my 2 cents on that. Okay, I'm back. I thought I heard a kid screaming or something. It wasn't. It must have been my own thoughts screaming. Okay, the last book that I read for January was Chef's Kiss of a Thriller. I don't think I've ever given a thriller a 5-star, and I didn't this time either. I just can't for some reason. I need a book to be very poignant, life-changing, something I'm going to dwell on for a long time, and thrillers usually just don't hit the mark for me. But I did give this thriller a 4.75. So basically a 5-star, just don't tell anybody. Okay, it's The One by John Mars. And if you haven't read this thriller and you love thrillers, get it. Listen to it. The audiobook was so good. It's got a full cast. And this book is written from the perspective of many different characters. I should have counted, but I didn't. And the premise is that science, a corporation, has discovered that you can do a scientific test and your DNA will reveal who your one true match in this world is. Okay, so people are getting this test done and their marriages are being ruined because they're figuring out they're not married to who their soulmate should be. People are discovering things out about themselves that they would have never thought. We even get to follow a serial killer, and that storyline was, I just love the way it was written because it made me have sympathy for a serial killer. And when an author can make me feel bad for a bad guy, then you know it is excellent writing. And this was excellent writing. Somehow John Mars was able to switch perspectives every single chapter, but still I was able to know who was talking, and I hadn't forgotten what had happened the previous time that person spoke. And every chapter leaves you on a cliffhanger. It's like, you cannot put this book down. I mean, you just devour it. So go read it if you like thrillers. I loved it. I have not looked at if John Mars has any other thrillers out there, but if he does, I'm gonna look at them and see. Okay. So that was my January. I found a new favorite of all time. I found a thriller that was almost maybe my favorite thriller of all time, and then a few books in between. But overall, I think it was an excellent reading month. And go ahead and check out my February reading month. It was not as successful in my mind as January was, but here's to March. March may be even better. Let's see. Oh, and do all the things, you know, subscribe, like, comment, all the stuff that helps me out as a small channel content creator.